Hi there YouTube, Big G back again with another video. When you do a bit of browsing through your software library, you don't realize how many games were developed by one particular company as such. And Ultimate Play the Game is definitely one of those companies. I mean, the games, they're not just known for games on the ZX Spectrum. Jetpack, 16K game, brilliant. And I've got a couple others in my collection from Ultimate Play the Game, because their titles were released on the Commodore 64, on the Amstrad, the BBC, as well as the MSX platforms, and they changed a lot of the genres. You know, if you go back and you think of Knight Lore, when Knight Lore came out, I mean, that isometric view, the first time I saw Knight Lore, it was like, wow, I mean, it really blew you away. First of all, it was the first of that genre that they developed. And an interesting fact around it is that Knight Lore was actually completed, or they had finished that game before they released Saberwolf. And the two brothers decided that, you know, it's no good them releasing Saberwolf, or releasing Knight Lore and then Saberwolf after that for the ZX Spectrum, because who's going to buy Saberwolf? Especially when this new groundbreaking technology was about to be released. So it's one of the first instances where I know that a company actually finished a game, and a really big title for them, and held it back until they finished another game. Saberwolf, released it, garnered the sales, and Saberwolf was a really great game. I mean, those colors and the gameplay was really great. And then brought out Knight Lore, and you know, just blew us all away. And one of the reasons they said, the two brothers mentioned, was that they were so far ahead of the rest of the pack that they could actually afford to do this. So Knight Lore came out, and then this genre just blew up. A number of companies started copying them, Ocean and so forth, with the Batman series, and they copied that isometric 3D view, but nobody could do it as well as what Ultimate Play the Game could do it. I mean, think back to Alien 8, Gunfight, as well as a couple of other titles. I mean, they were really brilliant. Now, Ultimate Play the Game was formed by Tim and Chris Stamper. Two brothers. They had a bit of a history from the arcade gaming era, and in 1982 they formed Ultimate Play the Game and developed the games that I've shown you, some of them from my collection, across numerous platforms. And one of the things about the two brothers is that they seem to have some sort of foresight into what was going to be happening in the games industry. So nearing the end of that sort of golden era of the 8-bits, they'd already had Plan B in action, and their Plan B was to work for Nintendo. So they sold off the rights to the Ultimate Play the games catalog, and they sold it off to US Gold, and they developed, or they formed a new company called Rare. Now, the brothers formed Rare in 1988 and started developing titles for the NES system. Now, one of the reasons they mentioned why they moved in this direction was that, first of all, piracy was difficult, and now we all realize that we contributed to the downfall of many companies from the 8-bit era. I mean, I was guilty of it. I pirated many games. I mean, games were expensive back in the day, and at school you would pirate games. So that was one of the reasons why they moved out of the 8-bit era, was because they were losing so much revenue to piracy. So they wanted a system that they could develop their games for and make sure that they got paid for. Now, one of the games in my system that I've just picked up recently, Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. This was developed by Rare, a role-playing game, to good reviews. I'm still going to do a gameplay on it. And while developing for the NES, they developed on a number of Nintendo systems. And they actually brought out a number of really well-known games, specifically around the Super Nintendo, as well as the Nintendo 64. Before I get to those games, let's just have a look at some of the other titles, because they also enjoyed, or they made a lot of games for the handhelds. And just going through my library of handheld games, I just grabbed a few of them. And Donkey Kong Land 2. This was developed by Rare for the Game Boy, as well as Donkey Kong Country 2. And there you can see their little logo over there, Rare. Banjo Pilot. And then a game that I've actually haven't played yet. It's one of the last ones that I think they developed for the Game Boy Advance. Here's a sealed in copy. It's Mr. Pants. It's a puzzle game. Also done by Rare under the THQ banner. And then for the Nintendo 64, and they developed some really groundbreaking great games there. One of them, Perfect Dark. It actually needs the little memory add-on so that you can play this, as well as GoldenEye 007, a first-person shooter, very well regarded, scored very highly, did very well for them, and he's often thought of as a game that developed that first-person shooter genre further. Other games, Donkey Kong Country, also very successful games, as well as Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was sort of towards the end of the Nintendo 64 life cycle. So if you go onto eBay and you see a Conker's Bad Fur Day, you'll be shocked at the price that game gets, because there's limited quantities of it available. Now, Tim and Chris, obviously, as I mentioned previously, they really understood the games industry, and they seem to always know when to get in and when to get out of the games industry. So in 2002, they sold off the company to Microsoft and started developing games specifically for the Xbox platform. And in 2007, the two brothers decided they wanted to move off to greener pastures, and they left the industry as such to pursue other interests. So overall, a company that has had a very colorful history, that have brought out numerous games that have changed the industry. I enjoyed playing their games, right back to the Jetpack days for the 8-bit, right through to the Nintendo era, all the way through now to the Microsoft, which I don't actually have any of their Microsoft games, but I'll eventually get it in my collection. So, you know, hats off to Ultimate Play the Game, and then moving on to Rare, and to the brothers Tim and Chris Stamper, because you know, you've left us a lot of memories. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that little history lesson on one of the great gaming companies from back in the day. And yeah, cheers from me.